And that's it. We're live, Mark.
Well,
I wasn't sure if it would go off like it should. You never know with this technology, but thanks to COVID, we've all had to learn and adapt, and it's a really cool platform. So I'm excited to be able to use it with you today.
and I think I've got enough battery charge in my computer for this to work the whole time.
Oh, so
Dying,
it could have been a lack of planning, huh?
Yeah, hopefully we're good. I think we're good.
We'll make it, or we won't, whatever. Maybe I'll just fill the void, which is not a big problem for me, as you know. So first off, I want to thank Coach Mark Saroni with Paragon Training for coming on here today. He actually reached out to me, I don't know, a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and said, man, we need to do another podcast. And every time we do a podcast or we connect and chat, we find that we're a little bit different brain, but we're like-minded in the overall kind of scheme of things. And so I said, man, you're right. He knows you gotta pin me down to really make stuff happen. And so we followed up on it. I said, you know what, let's do, he wanted to talk about the state of endurance sports. And he and I have chatted a little bit before this, not a lot, but I think we have a similar thought process. And I mean, for those that don't know Mark was actually one of my personal coaches early on in my endurance career, if you will, or lack thereof. And so I learned a lot from him initially in terms of what a coach should be and kind of how a coach should be. And at that point in time, I think you were elite amateur. I don't think you had gone pro quite yet, if I'm recalling correctly. Something like that.
Yeah, probably right around when I was qualifying. I mean, I was early 20s at the time, like just out of college too. So I was pretty early in my coaching journey. Later on in my athletic journey, or middle of my athletic journey, but early on in coaching journey for sure. So that's cool. I guess I didn't mess you up too much. Or just burnt you out from racing. I don't know.
if anything, you kept me from breaking myself repeatedly. So kudos on that. And we've chatted since then. Obviously, we kind of own different companies. I own Mind Right Endurance for those that aren't familiar, and he owns Paragon Training. And the little quote at the bottom: "Get your mind right and suffer faster." Get your mind right. It's kind of my thing, and suffer faster is his thing. And I thought, those two things go hand in hand. Perfect. So I thought, we'd hop on here today, and we both have a unique perspective. He's been in the sport a lot longer than me. I think you've been in the sport, 20 years now?
Not quite, but close.
Yeah.
18, 19. Yeah, 2001, 2002.
So he's been an athlete since 2001, 2002. So 18, 19, 20 years. I'm coming up on a 10-year anniversary of sorts of being an endurance athlete. And so we've seen a lot. And there's a lot we haven't seen, but I think that what we want to talk about today is what we've witnessed as coaches and as kind of leaders in the endurance space, and that's just what in the hell's going on with the sport, with endurance sports. Not just, we'll probably speak to triathlon quite a bit, but endurance sports in general. So, Mark, where with all of this, let's back up. Before all this COVID stuff happened, did you ever think that there would be something that would impact endurance sports the way that it has and almost change the shape and the direction of it as it is right now?
No, I don't think any of us could have seen this coming. And I think the craziest part is just how obviously global it is, right? When everyone's worried about not being able to swim, it's like, this is the first time in history everyone in the world is in the same boat, right? No one can swim. No one has a race. It's not just in your county or your region. It's kind of it's a global thing, right? So we're all trying to navigate it together and find workarounds together. And I think it's been, for me personally, I've been able to train a little more this year and sleep a little more this year and just think a little more this year. And it's really just given me a chance to think kind of about what does the sport mean? Sure, for me as an athlete, but also see that kind of acted out for my athletes as well, and on our team, and kind of see how are different people handling it and juggling it, and I think it's just it's an interesting time, of course, like we keep saying, but I think there can be a lot of positives that come out of it, and even kind of a rethinking, restructuring of the framework that we view sport in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've asked people within the Mind Right group and the private group, and he's asked people within the Paragon private group to come on. If you all have questions, there's a link in your group. If you're one of the two athletes from either camp, there's a link in your private groups right now. We want you to come on and ask a question, or you can post your question on YouTube, and we'll do our best to kind of answer it. And what I'm going to do, Mark, I know you and I have some stuff we kind of want to cover, but we've got two people backstage. I want to go ahead and bring Jesse in and let's see what Jesse's thinking. So we'll bring Jesse up here. Where's he at? Screen's blank. Jesse, can you hear us?
Hello.
There we go. You got a question for us, Jesse? And people that don't know, you can't see, this is Coach Jesse. He's one of the coaches with Mind Right. But Jesse, what question do you have for us, or what thought do you have?
You caught me off guard. I'm making my lunch right now, actually.
You always want to go backstage.
He meant to join the YouTube channel, not the live stream, maybe.
Yeah. All right, Jesse, get out of here. Go make your peanut butter sandwich.
All right.
That's awesome. It looks like I have Jen in the back room. Let's see if Jen has a question, or if she just followed the wrong link as well. And Jen is muted, so this may be an interesting little experiment. There we go.
I also didn't sign up for this. I'm just trying to listen and making 3 lunches also.
Well, there we go. So, Coach Mark, back to you.
Okay.
So, all right. So there's that. My question for you is, what difference have you seen? Let's break it down. Let's do a time frame of let's say February or March until say June or July, and then let's do like the latter half of it, like the June until September. Have you noticed any difference in mindset shifts of athletes, or motivation levels, or races, or anything like that with your experience on that side of the house?
Well, I think, at the beginning, none of us really knew how long this would go on for. And so at the beginning, it was almost this mad, stressed out scramble, right? I remember the first kind of weekend they started canceling things. People are signing up. Okay, I'm going to do this next race in June instead, or even like people were registering for a late May race after their April race was canceled, just, okay, I'm in good shape. A couple, this event's canceled, but I'll just push that fitness back 3 weeks and, make it work kind of thing. And then that kind of quickly turned into devastation, realizing, everything in June is being canceled. I remember when the Grandma's Marathon at the end of June canceled in like early April, all of a sudden people were kind of like, oh, okay, this is going to be a while. And then it was initially, I think, still this kind of scramble to stay fit and stay active and kind of rah go, swimming with stretch cords in your pool and kind of finding whatever crazy things we could do. And then it's like right around that mid-June, I think, is when kind of this calmness and then sense of reality has started to set in, that we may get to race some small events later in the fall, but it's going to be different. Racing's going to look different. And then people are kind of, I think, now trying to figure out, where does if I don't have races for a while, where does training then fit in? Kind of training versus exercising sort of thing. So that's kind of been the shift, I think, since midsummer is just a settling in. I say that I have a lady trying to qualify for Boston at a marathon tomorrow. So there are races coming back. But I think a lot of people are kind of coming to terms with, okay, I may not race for a while. And then, all right, well, what does that mean from the training standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's exactly, at first it was like, okay, cool. It's just a bump in the road. We'll delay.
Sure. Do stretch cords every day for 45 minutes.
I got all this time because I'm working from home. Yeah. And then it goes, I don't really want to do this for the next 6 months.
I hate stretch cords. Yeah.
And that's I think that's the funny part, but also the good parts, like the resilience of endurance athletes specifically. I think in comparison to people who aren't crazy like us, is that, no matter what endurance event you're doing, it never goes to plan, like hardly ever. And you're always having to kind of adapt and overcome, whether it's your training cycles or your actual race day or whatever. So I think we're a very resilient people. But I think that at some point it starts to kind of wear on you, because there are 2 types of athletes in my mind: those that train to race and those that race to train. You sign up for a race so that you force yourself to train, or you just train and you just put a race out there just to have something to do as a benchmark along the way. Well, now none of that's happening. Now we're all just training to train, to an extent. And I think that what's gotten forgotten is that at some point you're going to get back to racing. At some point, there'll be an event in 2021 that you go to do, and the people that kind of backed off and kind of stepped back and said, man, I don't want to do much more. I don't know what's going on. I'm overwhelmed. Now you're schooling at home, doing all this crazy stuff. Yeah. Those people next year are going to go, man, I really wish I had more fitness. I have personally had athletes take a little bit of a break saying, hey, I just need some time away. Just shut it down for a bit. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Don't come back to me in January with the same goals that you had this year at that same event. Because unless you're doing the work to be just consistent, not hammering it, but to be consistent, it's really going to show. And I think that's something that I think will be the second phase of the eye-opening of all this.
Yeah. And I think the thing is our perspective, I mean, I mainly know North America, but I've seen this my whole life. Our perspective is very, the question I always get is, what race are you training for? Yep. And I almost never, I hate that question because I train and then I race multiple events throughout the year, right? And sure, some are more important than others. The big one, you might have an A race or something like that. But really, the goal is training and getting faster. And then throughout each year or season, you kind of pick different events or work on different weaknesses and things like that. But, I think a lot of people I don't want to, I'm not bashing Ironman at all, but a lot of people have the tendency, we tend to be in the triathlon world, be very Ironman centric, even kind of marathon centric, right? And it's train for this Ironman, train for this marathon. Well, Ironman and marathon training are not sustainable 365 days a year. You can't be doing you can't run 20 miles every weekend. You can't ride 5-6 hours. I mean, it's a big push. It's exhausting. And so a lot of times what happens is people train for that Ironman, they train for that marathon, and then it's a big load, it's a big stress, it's a big push, and they need a break after it. But it kind of often, I think, overwhelms people so much that then it turns into 2 months off, 3 months off, 4 months off. And that's been me as well. After my first few Ironmans, where there are these like long breaks, a long off season where maybe I worked out some, but I wouldn't call it training. It was kind of random exercising. But if you want to see improvement year over year, that's not the approach you can take. You can't train 8 months and take 4 months off every year. You might improve some, but it's going to be very static. And so I think that's one of the big positives is if you can switch that lens from training for a race, you're training to become a better athlete, and whatever all that entails, speed, strength, skill, endurance, and then you do specific pushes towards certain races. As events come back, you can easily pivot that fitness to other things. But we wouldn't tell a 15-year-old that wants to go to the Olympics, well, you're not going to go to the Olympics this year, so you might as well just take the year off, right? Well, no. So when someone says, I have a goal of going to Kona or qualifying for 70.3 Worlds, and then, Worlds is canceled this year. Okay, well, I'm going to take a break.
I'll see you next June.
That doesn't make sense. You said that's your goal. Like, you need to train for multiple years to build up to that. In the same way, you wouldn't tell a high school kid or a collegiate swimmer that wants to go to the Olympics to, hey, because the Olympics aren't happening for 4 more years, take this year off. No, I mean, if you want to get better, each year stacks on itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we got a question coming in from Jesse. I guess he made his lunch and he just typed the question in. So Jesse's question is, as coaches, how have you all approached your training, quote unquote, plan writing, and what creative ideas have you tried during this pandemic? And I know that you and I both have sat around and we haven't talked about it. I'm going to assume that we've sat around and kind of equally racked our brains going,
yeah,
God, because at the end of the day, we become a motivator. We become the reason that people do certain things. And you and I both can can encourage people to do things that are outside their comfort zone. Like, that's what we do. So whether it's long bike rides or just craziness, what have you done, Mark, or what have you attempted to do that may or may not have worked in terms of to kind of creative ideas to keep people going, but also how have you approached your training plan writing for your athletes? Great question, Jesse.
Yeah, that is a good question. I think number one for me is leading by example. And I don't really buy into the philosophy that, you can't be a good coach if you're also training. we don't say that someone's not a good lawyer because they're training for triathlon, or they're not a good doctor because they're training for triathlon. No, we applaud them, right, for, wow, being able to juggle a demanding work schedule while training to race and qualify for Boston, or, you know, something like that. So for me, that's kind of been the first thing is, one, I just like training. I like exercising. So continuing to show my athletes, look, I'm still progressing. I still have personal goals in sport the same way. If I'm going to expect you to get up early and be at the track at 5 a.m. on Tuesday morning, I'll be there as well. Or I'll get up and do my long bike ride early on the weekend because that's what I need to do. So I think, one, it's part of that keeping people motivated is showing them, hey, look, I am still motivated. You know, I'm not taking a break. So let's kind of continue to do this together. And then the second thing is just really trying to understand each individual as best they can, because I think that's where everyone is different. I personally am pretty good at just kind of finding random goals like a Strava KOM or things like that. But, you know, one thing I did is actually some of my runners, I would put in, hey, here's 3 KOMs I found in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Go pick one and just do it, you know. Or we'd set up, hey, we're going to do this, you know, 8-mile super hilly trail run course this weekend or next weekend. Go run it. You know, something new, something exciting. It's 2 hours on your feet, kind of walk hiking sort of deal. So almost having to, that kind of comes back to the example of teaching people, hey, here's how you build training into more of like a sustainable lifestyle, setting different goals kind of thing, and trying to understand, hey, what is your schedule super crazy right now? You know, some people are like, I'm busy, I'm crazy, I can't only manage so much. Others are like, hey, I've got tons of time, like let's ride more. Okay, let's ride our bike more. You know, so I think it comes down to just trying to communicate as much as possible, and hopefully the athletes communicating back, you know, voicing what they're going through. And then adjust it. You know, if anything, it's become more individualized and more unique. You know, as soon as some of my athletes' marathons were canceled, we were pivoting to, okay, well, you're not running 2 hours this weekend. You're gonna run an hour on your own, or you're gonna go find a trail run, or here's a Strava KOM, or, you know, it was like real time. I'm tweaking on Wednesday what this weekend is going to be, because all of a sudden the lens has shifted, and then trying to say, okay, well, then what's our goal for the rest of the summer, kind of thing. Well, and so I'm sure you've done the same.
Yeah, very, very similar. And you're right. Everyone's unique. There were some people who own businesses that I work with that their business just got crazy busy. And there are other people that they're all of a sudden, you know, quarantined at home. We got all kinds of time. Yeah. But at the end of the day, pretty much everyone's race calendar, which is the reason I get the most pushback, is because they've got X, Y, and Z race coming up. So they don't want to go do a trail run. They don't want to lift weights. They don't want to do these things they normally do. Yeah, and so I'm encouraging people like, hey, listen, you've got fitness, go play with it. Like, go do something. You want to ride your bike 150 miles? Hey, off you go. You want to do 1,000 squats? It's a ridiculous idea, but go do it, you know? Yeah. And then the other thing we did was we created several things during the quarantine initially, where we created a ton of online virtual opportunities, and all the coaches kicked in, and it was a nice schedule, and it kept people kind of going early in that onset of that delay mindset of, hey, let's just hang on. Let's just hang on.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we did a 24-hour bike relay. Myself and Kendall and Will did it just because it's a stupid idea. And then we took that and we moved that over. And we had people sign up, 2 people per hour block, or 2-hour block from the entire Mind Right family. I think it got people really engaged. What I noticed, the biggest thing, we canceled camp kind of last minute, just out of kind of being smart and respectful. And everyone missed that. Like a lot of what we do is the engagement with other people, and that was taken away for a while. And so we try to create that virtual opportunity. So, all right. So Jesse, great question, buddy. I appreciate that. We got Jen in backstage. Let's see if she's still listening or if she actually has a question. Let's put Jen on the hot seat. She's muted real quick. See if Jen came up with a question or she just couldn't find the right link here.
I have a question.
Yes, go for it, Jen.
Do you find like you guys are backing off a little bit, like with COVID and, you know, the potential for an athlete to get sick? Like, is that in the back of your mind in terms of, you know, telling athletes to go do X, Y, and Z, or push it, you know, week to week?
Yeah. So great question. I'll say no. I didn't have the mindset or the thought process of athletes getting sick. What I had the thought process of, for a lot of athletes, they're they try to be forever fit. They try to be fit every single week and every single race and all this stuff. And so it created the opportunity, from my point of view, to allow athletes to maybe slightly detrain and not be as specific, but still stay active. Because what happens is athletes want to hold on to this fitness forever. And when they lose the fitness, they kind of get this insecurity and this fear. And typically they lose fitness like post-race, for example. And they kind of take a step back a little bit. And so from my perspective, it wasn't oh my God, these athletes might get sick. It was more of hey, let's just settle in. We've been going at it hard because you were right on the doorstep of many of the first Ironman long course races of the year when all this happened. So people were kind of coming into peak training. And I said, hey, let's pump the brakes. If they've delayed that race, let's detrain just a bit. Let's relax. Let's readdress. Mark, how did you handle that? What was your thought process?
I mean, I would say the same in the sense that, the foundation of any training program should be health first, right? If you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to adapt to the training stress. So I think by nature, for most of the year, we try to train at a level that allows the athlete to keep their immune system high and stay healthy and avoid getting sick. I think a lot of times when you see that, it's maybe in the last few stages of an Ironman or marathon build where the fatigue levels are just getting really high from the chronic training load. And that's why sometimes they'll get sick after a race or something like that, because the chronic training load was high. Even though you taper, it's still, the body's been stressed, and then you do this big event and the immune system's just zapped. So I think we didn't do the full build, right? Because there was no races, and then you didn't have the big extreme race day. So being able to train a semi-normal, again, just avoiding the super long rides and efforts in a chronic sense, kind of stacking week after week, was able to keep people healthy. A lot of people are able to sleep a little bit more, which also helps, that kind of thing. So even, I have some marathoners running the virtual Boston tomorrow, and we didn't do tons of 20-mile runs in February, March, when they were training for Boston. We were doing long tempos, a lot of hard runs. This summer, we just kind of kept the training load moderate. They did some long runs, but there's not a time specific goal for tomorrow. And so knowing, just also from a mental kind of fatigue standpoint, those long runs beat you up. So, we'll go do a one long hard day, but the chronic load isn't super, super high. And I think that's one of the best ways to keep the immune system up is just balancing training across intensity distribution, as well as that chronic load is really the biggest thing. I think that can wear you down. So if you keep that at a moderate level, the health should be able to stay up.
Yeah. Solid stuff. Jen, did you have a follow-up question, or did that answer it?
I'd answered it. I have another question if you need.
Go for it.
Are there any permanent changes, or at least semi-permanent changes, that you see happening in races with, obviously distancing, aid stations, anything that you guys have heard of that, might stick around for a little while once races come back?
Great question. And I'll let you handle that one first, Mark.
I think, yes, I think there's going to be a lot of permanent changes, and potentially things that are good. We had a local triathlon here a few weeks ago, pool swim, 300 meters, 9-mile bike. And it went well. Our packets were underneath our bike rack when we got there. It was a pool swim. So we were 6 feet apart, wearing a disposable mask that we threw away right as we got in the water. As soon as you finish, you grab your bike and leave. And I think that's doable. I'm going to Louisiana, actually, Jeremy, like 2 weeks for the New Roads Triathlon.
Yep.
And from what I've heard, it's going to be a similar, swim start, rolling start. So I think in some ways, yes. In some ways, some of those things were already set up. Ironman was already doing rolling starts. So we'll keep doing rolling starts, just with wider gaps, right? The athletes will be spaced more, and now they'll be wearing a mask. I'm personally a fan of letting us go into transition and grab our bike as soon as we're done so we can leave. I don't mind not hanging out the whole time. So I think that'll be easier to do for the small local events. I know we were going to talk about this some. And I don't know how you're going to have rock and roll races with 20,000 people in the start line. I don't 30, know.
40,000 people. Yeah.
Even a big Ironman with 3,000, that's tough. I don't know how you can space out, the small local try. We had 3 bikes to a transition rack, and it said,
Cool.
I always have 3 bikes on a transition rack. This is great. So I don't know how you're going to do that. I think it's an opportunity for the low, this New Roads race is a small half Ironman I wouldn't normally do. I mean, I'm not going to normally drive to Louisiana for a half Ironman. I'm going to pick an Ironman branded event, but so I think it's an opportunity for local race directors to kind of thrive again and let them showcase, hey, we can offer cool events in our city that 100, 200, 300 people can do. People aren't going to want to travel as much. A lot of people are trying to be conscientious, which is good, about limiting their own exposure. And so I think it will change things from the racing standpoint, but in many ways for the good, I honestly think. Do you agree, Jeremy? Uh-oh, Jeremy, did you freeze? You're frozen on my end. Well, Jeremy's frozen, so I can I'll just talk to myself. I don't know if he's frozen for others as well. But yeah, I think the racing is something that'll come back slowly, but I think it's coming back actually expected, which is exciting. I don't know if we'll have some of the big events, but the small ones coming back is, hey, a race is a race. It's a chance to push yourself, to kind of go maybe do a little bit harder workout than you normally would, hurt a little bit more than you normally would. And I think that's a good thing. I think moving away from too much just Ironman is a good thing as well.
There we go.
Right, Jeremy, you back? Okay.
I think you and I broke the internet because we had the exact same idea. And I was gonna segue on or piggyback on what you were saying. I'm calling it right now in the running world, there'll be a resurgence in 5K racing. I really believe that the 5K race and the sprint distance triathlon have disappeared to an extent over the past few years. And so I think that those are typically smaller races. Those are more, I guess, maybe casual events to an extent. And I think that those events, because they're small and they're nimble and they can really adapt, I think they're going to make a comeback in the next few years.
Well, like that local sprint I was talking about that we had here, the Damo 9 Triathlon, 150 people. And this year it was a fairly competitive race. People drove down from Austin to do it. It reminded me of 5, 6, 8 years ago. I used to travel around with Robbie Wade and my buddy Travis Decker a lot. And there were some sprints in Houston and out in Tyler, Texas that would offer, $300. And we'd show up, and these were 57-minute races, and they were fast and they were hard. Racing that Damo 9 sprint, I think it was 40 minutes, and it was like, man, I forgot how much that hurts.
They're coming back. I'm calling it.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think learning the skill of racing, the skill of just transitioning, all of that. I got to learn as a junior athlete, right? Racing when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And I don't need to practice transitions anymore. Well, if all you do is Ironman with a change tent and someone taking your shoes off, and you don't need to practice transitions. Well, if you're in a little sprint try, you better believe you're gonna go practice some transition, because it becomes real clear that there were, I think, 5 guys finished between 45 and 46 minutes at this Damo 9 try. I mean, that's a tight clump.
Let's take it a step further. How many more people do you see that are active right now that maybe in your neighborhood that I was like, not only do you live in my neighborhood, you own a bike or you walk or run? Those people are going to be looking to get in. I'm telling you, in the next 2 years. 5K races and sprint tries are where all these people that are just now getting active now from a outside of endurance geek space, they're going to enter into our space. And so we got to have the stuff in place to support those people. So I really think the 5Ks and the shorter stuff that's not intimidating will absolutely flourish in the next couple of years. Let's see here. I got Sean in the back. Backstage. We're going to bring Sean on and see if he's got a question. Sean, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, buddy. I got you loud and clear. You got a question for us?
Oh, no, I was just kind of listening.
He was hanging out. See, they got confused on the links. That's perfectly awesome. Just keep on listening, buddy. I'll let you hang out in the backstage.
Okay.
Don't drink all my wine that's back there. All right. So Mark, I do want to kind of expand on that since we don't have any current questions. If you guys are watching on YouTube or you come up with a question, you can either post it in the comments or you can hop in the backstage area and we'll bring you on. But my hope is that the small races do come back because they are small, because they are nimble, and because they are. So I want to kind of move now to discuss kind of the future of what you see maybe possibly coming, what I see. And my hope is that these races come back because those are the races that made me fall in love with the sport. And those are the races that have ultimately, if you think about it, have ultimately just kind of disappeared since kind of the emergence of the rock and roll series and the major marathon series and things like that, where people go, it's either up here or it's nothing. And they don't really think about the smaller local races. I mean, people still go to them, but when's the last time I went to do just a 5K? It's been many years. Yeah. Because, you get to that point of going, well, if I'm going to wake up at freaking 6 a.m. or, if I'm waking up at 4:30 a.m. to go to a race, I want to be racing for 5 hours.
Sure. If I'm going to travel, or it's got to be worth, it's like we look at it as a kind of like dollar cost, how many miles do I have to travel and how much is the entry fee? I need to get as most for my dollar as possible. But I think, the thing is, you froze again. So
I didn't come back.
Oh, there you are. Okay. I think the thing is with that, like you said, as new people get into the sport, they're going to do a 5K. Well, once you do a 5K, guess what? You want to do the next one faster. I mean, that's how we work as humans, and I kind of like to say, no one is too slow to get faster, right? When someone says, "Oh, I'm not fast, or I don't do it for time." Okay, that's fine, but you're not going to be mad if you go faster, right? It feels good to get a little bit better. If you do your first 5K in 40 minutes, when you go 35 minutes for a 5K, that's going to feel good, and now of course that's going to take work. That's going to take effort. We had our track group had been back training, with 10 to 12 people per practice the last few months. And so we did a little track meet with just our group. And, I had some of the ladies that are doing a marathon. They ran a 3K. How often do you run a 3K in North America? If you ran in college, you probably ran 3K. But everyone else was like, what's a 3K? And some of these ladies, I was kind of going through the track start, where you go to the line and you take a step back, and then the guy, if you ever ran in high school, you kind of know how that works. But we're doing first call, second call, and a lot of these people didn't know what that was because they start a little bit later in life, sort of thing. But we went out to the track and we ran a hard 3K or a hard 5K, and then we did a 4x4 relay. And the goal was just run hard, run fast. Kind of thing. And I think that from a health standpoint, it's good for us to have some intensity. From a mental standpoint, it's good to kind of push that extreme into the pain spectrum, because then when you're doing longer runs, slower, it doesn't feel as bad. From a neurological standpoint, you're recruiting different muscle fibers, and it just keeps you from being stale, and again, we don't have to always be training for a massive marathon or Ironman. And I think, the biggest thing I've seen too is that with most athletes, if you get really fit, you can race and perform at a variety of different levels. And I think that's one thing people don't realize is that you can, and it's been kind of a year for me personally of self-experimentation, with that and kind of seeing what's possible, where, at one point this summer, I did my peak 20-minute power ever on the bike. And then the next weekend I rode 200 miles. Right. And so just kind of like exploring the ends of the range of endurance performance, from like really hard, really acute, really burning to, literally all day sort of thing. And realizing if you train well, it gives you this ability to go do this super long explore adventure ride, or go super fast and harder than you've ever been done before.
And so to go with that, I got a comment. Jen said, what are the marathoners going to do now? You know what the marathoners are going to do now? They're going to get faster.
They're going to run a 5K.
They're going to quit this whole shuffling thing that the vast majority does. They're going to work on their run form. They're going to work on speed, which is something that, especially as we're coming to this time of year, a lot of the marathoners have been putting in kind of the base miles and just grinding through the summer. And with where we're at now, I think the marathoner is going to go, okay, well, I've got the base. Maybe it's time to do 1 day a week track, one track, one tempo. And then you do that for 6 weeks. And you go, okay, we're going to hit 2 track days and do a speed block. And we're really going to develop and learn how to run faster at the short stuff and then kind of bleed that out of the longer stuff. What do you think marathoners are going to do, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's got to be. Again, marathon training is not sustainable year round. I think anyone would get fried to some extent if they're running 2 hours every single weekend. And the other thing we see with a lot of those athletes is they train in a very narrow intensity range.
Yep.
Right. So the speed is somewhere between 9:30 and 10-minute pace all the time. Right. Where they never go slower out here. They never go faster out here. And I think that's really the approach or mindset that's got to shift is that, but a lot of people don't realize if you train year round, you're developing this massive aerobic system, right? And by doing that, then it's easy to, okay, now for 10 weeks, do more of a marathon specific build. But because you never took a huge break from training, you kind of kept it at a slow or moderate simmer all the time, then it's easy to turn that up. It's hard to do a marathon block. You have to ramp so fast if you go, okay, I took 3 months off and now I've got to ramp for a marathon in 20 weeks. Well, that's going to be tough. There's a chance of injury, all of that. If you keep your training load somewhat moderate and ebb and flow, and you still take a break, of course. We all need off season, that kind of thing. It's pretty easy to ramp in 10, 12, maybe even 16 weeks, of kind of more of a specific marathon build. But there's also no reason you can't, try to go PR your 10K or 5K on the track. Maybe it's tiling yourself. Maybe you find a friend to pace with. Guess what? 5K, 10K runners, elite runners that run that distance, they run 90 minutes on the weekend. They run 2 hours kind of thing. So they're training their aerobic system. It's not like a 5K runner only runs 45 minutes, 30 minutes. No, they run a lot if they're an elite athlete. So we can kind of, I think, shift that lens and almost train a little bit more like the elite athletes by keeping a sustainable load year round, working on weaknesses, and then, okay, there is a race now. Well, now you're already fit, you're already strong, but you're not overtrained. So now you have this massive platform to build on. You'll recover faster from your workouts, so that marathon training won't tire you out as much as it would have in previous years when you did a straight build from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 10 weeks kind of thing. So I think that's got to be the biggest thing that people can see. I think one other thing I've seen from a lot of people is without racing, they've been able to train more consistently than ever. And I did a blog post kind of about that, and just showing that, a lot of these athletes have had their best year of training ever, and that's not going to go away. The year you spent training super consistently without a race doesn't just disappear the next year when races are back. That gives you a massive platform to build on.
I hope to.
Oh, you're breaking up on my end again.
One thing and one thing only you hope comes out of this.
For me, one thing.
From a coaching perspective.
Okay, yeah.
In the case,
I think it's that shifting how people view training. Again, back to the question I hate the most personally is, what are you training for? What race do you have? If you want to train and perform well, training has to be year round. Now you need a couple weeks break here and there, 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off. But it's got to be an annual thing. And so I think people realizing, hey, training is an important part of my life. And then the second point would be, okay, how do I then, maximize performance within that year round, right? And that's where the nuance of kind of ebb and flow of certain workouts or disciplines come in. But I think really just taking the viewpoint from I train for a race to I train to be a better athlete. And then when you're a good athlete and when you're fit, you can race really fast. That's a byproduct of being fit. I know if you watch some of the Gwen Jorgensen YouTube channels, she'll talk about how her coach, Jerry Schumacher, doesn't even tell them they're going to race till like a week or two out, right? They just train, and when they're fit, he goes, okay, you're ready. Let's go race. And I think that's mind-boggling to some people. Like, what does that mean? But it forces you not to rush the process, to just kind of chip away, to build fitness, to build strength, to build speed, and then all of a sudden one day you wake up and, hey, I'm in good shape. Let's go race in a month and throw down. Are you still there, Jeremy, or did we lose you again? You're frozen again. At least on my end. Just have to talk. We've got a few questions, I think, from Sean, and then was asking about lifting weights, what kind of weightlifting you should be doing. I'm gonna give a little bit of a non-answer in that depends. Well, first of all, if you can find weight equipment right now, I know it's been hard to find gear for the home gym as the gyms were shut down and things like that. But I'm a big believer in. He's back.
I'm back.
Audio again. Okay, I was answering Sean's question. That you kind of answered.
I'm just gonna say real quick. You know what I hope comes out of this? Better internet connectivity because of these damn kids doing homeschooling. Carry on.
You've got a full house.
Everyone's pinging on the internet right now, working or homeschooling. So yes, that's why I keep dropping. Anyway, carry on with your conversation.
I was just saying, I was kind of giving a non-answer in that the weightlifting depends. I'm a big believer in strength training that just looks different for different people. You can call it strength training, mobility, activation, basic core sequences. It could be during different phases of the year, some real lifting. I think every athlete needs some amount. I do well with some pretty heavy strength work occasionally throughout the year, or actually quite frequently. I have some friends or some athletes that if they touch a barbell or a dumbbell, they instantly put on 5 pounds on their biceps alone. So, for them, the mobility side is a little bit more important. So I kind of lump all those things into one realm, the activation, mobility, strength. I try to make that for my athletes kind of a daily thing, actually. Not that they're doing squats daily, but some sort of movement kind of therapy or stretching or rolling is part of their daily routine. And then at different times of the year, you might incorporate heavier lifting. I don't think we need to. I think if we think, strength training, I got to go to the gym, I got to spend an hour and a half. I don't know when's the last time I lifted weights for more than 20 minutes, honestly. But it's something I do routinely, pretty much every day kind of thing.
Excellent. And so I appreciate you carrying that while I had connectivity issues. So final thoughts, Mark. What are your final thoughts on this topic? This, kind of the state of endurance sports. What's your final things you hope that people take away from this conversation?
I think mainly just the things we already mentioned, and I think people have realized that hey, it is a lifestyle. The biggest thing I'd encourage people, I guess, with is not living and training in this specific narrow range. Like I think we tend to. Don't be afraid to do some hard stuff to go fast every now and then. Don't be afraid to adventure and explore every now and then. You don't have to be training for a specific race to get really fit and really fast. It's a lot of fun to be in good shape. And that gives you the freedom to go ride for hours in the hill country, or to jump in a Zwift race, or to run a hard mile on the track. If you can be a well-rounded athlete across all intensity distribution levels, you could do those short, hard efforts, and that can be incredibly gratifying. Or you can go spin a bicycle, and that can also be incredibly gratifying. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can do both of those kind of thing. It takes obviously, proper training, but it can be done.
Yeah, I agree with that. My final takeaway from this is, outside of the things we discussed, is I hope that people start to reframe what being an athlete is in their brains, because I think that there's a certain validation that a lot of athletes look for when they complete a race or they complete some type of event, and that validates them as an athlete. And so this kind of goes into right now in my head, everyone's injured. And what I mean by that is it's that mentality of, I'm not racing or I'm not performing at the highest level, so therefore I am not an athlete, or I am not fit, or I'm not this or that. And so my hope is that psychologically, after all of this, people step back and they really start to reframe and kind of reposition what being an athlete really is, and it's not based on a race result. It's not based on a race time. And I think that ultimately, when they wrap their heads around that through all this, they're not racing, they're still an athlete. And that at the end of the day, when they finish a race, that time doesn't define whether they're an athlete or not. That's my true, genuine hope from all this. So, Mark, I greatly appreciate you giving the time and coming up with the idea. Listen, if you guys want to check out any of Mark's stuff, check out at Paragon Training on the IG, as kids say nowadays. I think it's paragontraining.org, I believe. Mark's a phenomenal coach, great human being, and just a great all-around dude. So check him out, give him some love and support. The thing is that Mark and I think we agree that if more coaches collaborated and worked together, the industry as a whole would be a better place to work for us, but it would be a better place of high quality for athletes, for you all, for your experience and your journeys. And so Mark and I are not afraid to kind of butt heads on topics and disagree respectfully, but we also understand that it takes different ways to get different people to different places. And that's why Mark's on here. We both have a healthy respect for what each other have done. And so be sure you go over there and check him out and support him. So outside of that, Mark, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Up and we'll put some on your YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, and all that fun stuff. And who knows, maybe we'll do it again sometime with better connectivity.
That's right. Yeah, when the kids aren't in school.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you got something out of it. If you have follow-up questions, you can hit him at his Instagram at Paragon Training, or on his website. You can hit me on my website or Instagram or Facebook or I don't know, Snapgram or whatever kids are doing these days.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok, so don't try to find me there.
All right. So outside of that, have a good day, buddy. I appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, Jeremy.